Hello, it's Shari here today, and I am going to be making a card that uses the new Fox costume set in a way that is not meant for Halloween. So I had this idea when I first saw this set as a way to stretch this set past Halloween. Of course, you can use that little cupcake fox like I did in a video a week or so ago, but today we're making a magic picture changer that uses our little skeleton to create a Get Well Soon card. So I'm making a magic picture changer. So I'm starting off by tracing the square where I'm going to stamp my regular fox. This is going to be the first picture that we see in the magic picture changer. And then the second picture we see is going to be the skeleton, and I'm going to white emboss him on black. So I'm going to trace that same square from the magic picture changer die so I know where to stamp my image onto the black cardstock. So the idea behind this card is the fox is at the doctor getting an x-ray, and so that's why the skeleton's going to be on black. So I've put my regular fox in my MISTI in placement to be stamped inside that square, and I'm just going to stamp it with some jet black ink so that I can color it here in a minute. And then for my other little fox, my skeleton here, I'm going to stamp him in some clear embossing ink. But first I'm going to put a whole bunch of powder on this so that I don't get this white embossing powder anywhere but on my fox. So I'm going to ink him up with that clear embossing ink and stamp him down, and I'm actually going to stamp him twice so that I make sure I have nice good coverage with that ink. So now I can cover him with white embossing powder. And then I'll just heat this up with my heat tool and melt it so we have that nice bright white image on that dark black cardstock. Now I'm going to stamp out some of the other images that I plan on using, and I'm going to use this little nurse bird that is part of this Get Well Soon set. And then I'm also going to use some birds from the Get Well Before and After set. So I'm going to use both of those birds, the one with his arm in a sling and the other one, along with some of the other images like the Band-Aid and the little bottle of pills. And I also stamped out the other nurse hat, but I forgot right here, but you'll see here in just a little bit it is stamped out. So I'm coloring these birds pretty simple. I'm going to start with my lighter yellow color, a Y32, and then I went in with a Y35 and just added some shading around the outside. And I'm going to color all these birds in the same way. So I've also got the little nurse hat. You can see I stamped that out. And I'm just kind of going around the outside with a very pale cool gray. I've got a YR01, which is this peachy color for my Band-Aids. And then I'm going to add the tiny little cross that comes in this set. There's one that comes with the other nurse bird too in the Get Well set. They're both the same, so I'm just using the one stamp to add the little red cross stamped in lobster ink to their hats. So now that I have everything colored, I'll just use the coordinating dies that go with these and cut them out. So I need to color my little fox. That's the first image that you see. So I'm going to use a YR14 and a YR18 to color him in. So I'm going all over with this YR14, and then I'll go in with the YR18 and add some shading. And I like to color my magic picture changers before I cut them so that I don't have that raw edge to catch my markers. It's just easier this way. So now that I've added that darker color, I'm just going to go in with a little bit of the lighter color and blend it out so you don't see those harsh lines between the two colors. And you get that nice blended shading. For the white on my fox, I don't like to leave it bright white. I like to kind of go in with a creamy, light creamy color. So I use an E00 and an E000. And I'm just adding that 00 around some shaded areas, and I'll blend it out with that 000 so that nothing on him's left bright white. And then I'm going to color the inside of his ears with a pink color here. So now that he's colored, I'm going to create a little mask for him so I can mask him off while I do some ink blending around him. So I've got a full sticky back post-it note, and I've just put it on a piece of scrap paper because it's easier to cut when it's on a piece of paper or cardstock. This is a piece of cardstock actually. And I'm just going to use the die to cut that out. You could also stamp it and fussy cut it. But sometimes my ink likes to smudge when I stamp it and cut it. So if I don't need the stamped image, it's just easier this way. So I'm going to go in with some squeeze lemonade and my blending brush, and I'm going to go all over with this yellow color right on my fox, and then I'm going to go in with dried marigold, and I'm going to pull some orange in from the outside. So I'm going to leave it kind of a yellowy glow around the fox with orange on the outside. And those two colors will blend together so it's not quite so bright around the fox. But this is going to coordinate with one of the papers that I pull into my little card, the frame that I'm going to put around him. So I'm going to go back with the lemonade and just blend it a little bit more so that you don't have that edge and you have that kind of glow. And then I can pull up the mask, which is always the most magical part, and my little fox is underneath. So now that he's all colored and he's ink blended, I can use that Magic Picture Changer die to cut him out. So you can see I've got him lined up with inside that square, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the little guy I embossed earlier. So I'm going to line him up inside the square of the pull tab piece, and I'll die cut him as well. So now I can start my assembly. There's these very thin tabs on each side of this, and we're going to create a pocket. So I'm going to very carefully fold those up on that score line that the die creates. And once I get it folded over, I'll just reinforce that fold with my bone folder. And then I'm going to do the same thing with that long skinny tab on the other side as well. So I'm just carefully kind of getting that fold going before I reinforce everything, since this is a really skinny piece here. And then I'm also going to go ahead and fold it in the center where that little slot is so that I have that fold already folded down and creased and ready to go when I assemble this whole thing together. And I'm going to be putting a cover over all this inking, so you're not going to see all that. So now to assemble my Magic Picture Changer, you're going to take the 1/8 inch double-sided tape and you're going to put it all along that thin tab that I folded over. You're going to want to do it on both sides of both tabs. So I'm putting a piece on the inside of both tabs here. And then I'll also put a piece on the outside. And I like to go over it with my finger or a bone folder, make sure that's really well stuck down. And then I'm also going to go with my powder tool. This one had some little pieces of paper I picked up off my desk, but I also use that powder tool so that things slide a little easier. You're going to see that I'm going to use that again here in a minute when I start assembling and I start getting these two pieces to slide in between each other. So I'm just putting that 1/8 inch double-sided tape along the outside of each tab now. So I've got that adhesive on both sides of those long skinny tabs. And you can go ahead and pull off the liner tape of the inside pieces. You're just going to fold those over and you're basically making a track on the inside of this pocket that we're going to create, and that is where that black piece is going to slide. So this just keeps those two pieces stuck down, making a little track for it to move inside of. So now I can take this black piece and I'm going to slide that tab in that slot, flip it over, and then you're going to take these pieces that it's cut and you're going to weave them into the tab piece that you put in the back. And the little corners go in just like this. There's 4 of them, and they're going to fit in the 4 slots of that other piece. And then these 2 will slide. It's kind of hard when it bends a little bit, so you can see I'm going to work it till they slide properly. And then I can make sure that that inside piece is straight between that track that I created. And again, I'm bringing out that powder tool because it creates a lot less friction the more powder you add to it, and it makes it slide a lot easier. And now that that's good and powdered up and sliding pretty well, I'm doing some more on the front, because the black piece slides in front of what you see here. So you want that powder between all the pieces. So now that I've got that all powdered up, I'm going to make sure that this piece is centered in the track that we created. And then I'm going to pull off that liner paper from the adhesive on these 2 tracks that we folded over. And then I'll just fold the pocket closed, and it'll stick on both those sides. So now you can work it a little bit, make sure it works properly. I felt that mine needed a little more reinforcement, so I just cut the tab piece of that inside, and it's longer, so it's not going to get caught. And I'm just gluing it to the back side of my fox piece. So this is just going to make it a little more sturdy for all the pulling and pushing that you're going to do on this card. Now I'm going to decorate that decorative panel from the Magic Picture Changer add-on, and I'm using some apricot ink and that tiny little band-aid from the Get Well Before and Afters just to decorate this piece with those band-aids to kind of create my own custom Get Well Soon pattern paper. And you can see that apricot really works well with that pattern paper frame I have cut there. And that's cut from some fall fleeing paper from last fall. And I'm just checking how my band-aids look. I'm going to go ahead and put the adhesive on the back of this decorative panel piece. You want to do it in the 4 corners, going to the outside corners, and on the 2 short edges. If you put the tape on the long edges, it will most likely catch the mechanism that's moving, so it's just better to avoid that area. Also, if you put adhesive around the inside opening, you're definitely going to catch the piece that moves, and it's not going to move. So this is the placement that the tape needs to be for this to work. So I'm going ahead and putting my double-sided tape in all those places. And then here's the paper I used. I'm also using it for the background as well and the frame. So I'm going to go ahead and glue my frame onto this decorative piece. And then I can take off the liner paper from that adhesive I put on the back, and we'll just layer this over top of our Magic Picture Changer mechanism that we made earlier. There is a little notch, and that is at the top where the pull tab is, so you want to make sure that is lined up at the top of this rectangle. So I'm using that blue flower from Fall Fling, and then I pulled out this sort of chevron dark teal from Into the Woods remix, and I think those 2 colors work really well together. This is going to be the ground for all my little birds to sit on, sort of in the foreground. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp the sentiment, and I'm using a combination of stamps from the Get Well Before and Afters, and also the Tiny Get Well Soon mini set. So it's going to say, "Get well soon, wishing you a fast recovery." So I've just lined it up in my MISTI, and I'm going to stamp it down with some crisp black ink, some pigment ink. And I'm stamping it twice so that it really stands out on that dark pattern paper. So here's the paper that I cut with a stitch rectangle. This is just going to be my background, and I chose this pattern paper with the flowers to kind of look like wallpaper would look like if you're in the doctor's office. So that's sort of where I was going with this. And then I'm going to want to die cut that dark piece at the bottom. It's going to layer on top of our Magic Picture Changer, but I'm just going to lay this here for placement so that I can figure out where to die cut it. So I wanted to kind of die cut it high enough to where the frame of the fox sort of sits on the ground and is not floating. So I'm using a stitched hillside here, and I'm placing that where I want it to fall. And I'm just going to hold it in place with tape, and I'm going to slide that out, and then I can run it through my die cut machine, and I have it cut in the place where I want it. So for the little decorative tab at the top, I'm using some Rainforest cardstock because it matches those teal colors that I'm using in my card. And I'm just going to layer it right over the black. So you'll see the black through the little arrow telling you to pull the tab. So this just folds over the top of that tab with a solid piece on the back and the die cut arrow on the front. And I've added some foam tape to the back of this Magic Picture Changer box. And I'm going to line it up on my card with the tab kind of lined up with the very top of the card. So it's not really centered, it's a little higher than centered. But because of what I want to do at the bottom, this is where I want that. But I don't want it past the top of the card so that it'll still fit in an envelope. Then I've added some foam to the bottom where my little ground is going to go. And I can just layer that lined up with the bottom. And you can see now that the frame of the fox, when he's in the x-ray machine, sits on the floor of our doctor's office here. So now I've got the other patient and the nurses that I need to add, my little nurse birds. So I'm just figuring out the placement of all these little pieces that I die cut earlier. And I'm going to decorate with the pill bottle and the band-aids kind of lying around, just sort of fill it up a little bit. And now that I know my placement of the pieces, I can start to glue them down. So this bird I'm going to glue to the side of the frame. And I'm going to add that little band-aid down there. Now the other nurse bird I'm going to pop up with foam. I'm making sure that I keep it towards the bottom so that whatever part might overlap my mechanism at the top, which is just really the top of her hat, I just want to make sure I don't accidentally catch it with the adhesive of my foam square. So I'm going to add that little nurse hat to the other bird. And I'll just glue that one to the other side of the frame. And then I'm also going to pop up the little pill bottle with a foam square. These are thin foam squares, so they're not as thick as the normal ones. But it just gives it a little more dimension there in the foreground. And then here is my finished Get Well Soon card, and I just think it is so cute. I love the idea that he's getting an x-ray and you get that black contrast with the skeleton. Thanks so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.